So, welcome to today's webinar. I'll just give you a quick overview of the agenda. So, we're just going to give you a bit of an introduction to Access Generation. The aim of today is to help you understand how to become an employer of choice for the next generation. So, to do that, we want to talk you through what we've been hearing from businesses. So, what are the current challenges out there? We've been doing some research with the Prince's Trust and groups of young people, so we want to give you a bit of an insight from those findings. And then we want to leave it with the strategic solution and some top tips to help you become an employer of choice. And if you stick with us to the end, we've got an exclusive giveaway for you. So, Access Generation. We're a social enterprise. We initially established 2 years ago, and our primary aim is to encourage businesses to employ and experience young people. With a bridge between education, youth initiatives, young people and businesses. So we help businesses to build their own pool of talent and become an employer of choice. And today we're able to do this webinar thanks to our corporate sponsors, Vacancy Filler. We're part funded by the Prince's Trust Initiative Talent Match, and we're currently a finalist in the East Midlands Chambers of Commerce Business Awards. This is who we are behind the screen. So my name's Jem. I'm one of the co-founders at Access Generation, and later you'll hear from one of the directors at Vacancy Filler, the recruitment software, Jason Staniforth. So what are businesses saying? Well, to date, we've spoken to nearly 300 businesses, and what they've been telling us is that there's a bit of a problem with recruitment because of Brexit. So what we're hearing is that Brexit is a bit of a concern. So there's around about 20 to 30% of process workers are EU nationals. And the latest statistics suggest that only 7,000 EU workers have registered in the last quarter. And that's compared to 148,000 in the previous quarter. So there's clearly a shift in the number of EU workers that are available to work. Businesses are saying that they're struggling to recruit, that recruitment is becoming difficult. And this is even the big brands. This is not just small and medium-sized companies. If you've got your computer sound on at the moment, if you could just press mute for me, I'm just hearing a bit of feedback. So we're just going to check that, see if we can get rid of the mute for you. There we go, we've just muted a couple, sorry about that. So businesses are struggling to recruit. So businesses that have typically relied on the strength of their brand because they're well known have had friends and families and people vying to get into their business, but they've now had to rely on recruitment agencies or jobs boards because they're finding the jobs market is tightening. In terms of retention, this is becoming a challenge because we're near full employment. So candidates have the choice. So that means as an employer, you're competing for candidates so that they're able to compare salaries and benefits, and whatever their criteria might be for choosing an employer, they're now shopping around. And productivity is a challenge. We heard recently that 90% of companies surveyed by Fujitsu had a strategy around technology, but 70% were not confident that they were able to get that strategy off the ground. Some of the other comments that we've heard from businesses today, and I'll just share some quotes with you, is that there's problems around attraction and recruitment, and that they've obviously now started to rely on recruitment agencies. Businesses often tell us that young people don't want to work in our industry. Now, this is something we've heard across many industries, including the housing sector, the automotive sector, and even some smaller niche sectors. But the truth is, young people don't know about industry. They don't have a preconceived perception of industries. A lot of companies are telling us that there's a bit of a skill shortage right now. So they're struggling to find the right people with the right skills. When you see some of the research that we've got to share with you later, you'll see that in fact, a lot of companies don't have inexperienced entry-level roles. So the question is it not having the right skills, or is it a lack of experience? The two are very different. So that's just some of the concerns that we're hearing from businesses. So we just want to open it up to you, yourselves and ask, are you struggling to find candidates? So using the chat on your webinar, can you tell us, 1, not being at all, or 10, really struggling to recruit? How are you finding it in terms of finding candidates? If you can use your chat system to vote. And if you've got any comments in terms of the way that you're struggling to recruit, have you got any examples of what you're struggling with? And also, are you concerned with the impact of Brexit on your recruitment? Okay, so we're getting a lot of 5, 6s and 7s, so middle of the road. Yeah, okay, brilliant. That gives us an idea of where everyone's challenges might be. Let me give you a bit of an insight into the research that we've been doing. So after speaking to businesses over the last 2 years, in the first 6 months, we were finding that businesses had a lot of opinions, but it was anecdotal opinions about young people. So we would often hear that young people were lazy, they would job hop, or businesses didn't feel they had time to train them. And we wanted to challenge their perceptions and challenge our own perceptions about the way young people go to market in terms of looking for jobs, but also what were their challenges in getting into work in the first place. And the biggest thing that we found was that 80% of young people would actually go direct to a company's website regardless of where they first saw the job advertised. So if you're posting on Indeed, Monster, Reed, those type of jobs board, a young person would still want to go to the company to assess them to see if that employer matches their criteria. So we ran these workshops with young people through the Prince's Trust and at De Montfort University, Loughborough University in Northampton. And from there, young people developed an assessment tool that scored the careers and jobs section on company websites. That was an initial sample of 50 companies. We extended that to another 150 companies. And I just want to share some of those headlines with you. I'm just going to read some comments before I go into the headlines. So not concerned about Brexit, but challenges with young people who have some experience. The uncertainty around Brexit is having an impact for us as many of our projects and jobs are funded by Europe. Okay, interesting. We'll come back to those. So headlines from our research are as follows. 2 out of 3 businesses had no entry point for young people to gain employment. And we've got a quote with each of these from a young person. So this one said that they just want an employer to give them a chance. If you consider a young person who's straight out of college or even university without any experience, they're caught in that catch-22 situation. No experience, no job, lack of job, no experience. So they just keep going round in a circle. Our second headline is that 43% of businesses had a very poor or no job section at all on their website. And young people were saying they couldn't tell from the website what was expected of me in terms of the job or even how to apply. Now, Jason, obviously at Vacancy Filler, this is an area of expertise for you guys. What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, hello everyone, and thanks, Gemma. I mean, young people, like most of us, I guess, they just want the information to be clear and concise. They want, in short, they want it to be black and white, and they want to know what's included in the job and what's not included in the job.
Go back to him.
You almost need to just state the obvious, say exactly what it is and exactly what it isn't, because they really do just appreciate the honesty and clarity that you can give to them. So as an employer, you may think that something is obvious, so you know, add it into the job advert. But to a young person that might not have that much experience, or if any experience at all of applying for a job, they might not know what to expect. So you're better off just telling them. And for everyone else, I guess it's just nice to have it spelled out. I mean, I hate personally making assumptions. And when I find out that something I assumed would be there in a job actually isn't, it's instantly a negative emotion that I'm going to associate with that role. And if that could potentially turn off a great candidate, why would you even risk it?
Definitely. So our final headline is that 4 out of 5 businesses were failing to promote themselves as an employer. So when it comes to young people, and we're talking about the Gen Z here, this is the young people that are born after 96. They have been brought up with mobile phones in their hands, and they've been brought up around fake news. So hearsay and statements or policies alone is not enough. So a statement from a young person said that businesses all say the same thing, like they will invest in their people, but I want to know what that means for me and how it helped me get to the next level in my career. So young people want to see the evidence of employer branding. And it's worth noting that one of the top criteria for a young person is progression. It's also looking at the company's purpose and evidence of that the company has equality and diversity and is an inclusive employer. All of that sounds quite alarming, quite strong headlines, but in fact what this represents is a big opportunity for your business.
Yeah, I mean, what we found is, although the research is very relevant to young people, it really isn't just young people that are looking for these things. Even your Zennials, Gen X and baby boomers, so that's like 33-year-olds up to 72 people that haven't hit retirement or don't want to retire, and all they're looking for is clarity in what they're actually applying for. They want to know, they want to know that they're working for a good company, a company that actually cares about more than just profits. I mean, a personal phrase that I like is companies want to attract people who are company people, but employees want to work for a company that is a people company. I mean, if you sat through this presentation so far thinking, oh God, we're awful, we're not doing any of these things from this presentation, you really don't have to. And I will tell you why. You've got as far as you have today as an organisation, doing everything that you're doing now in what potentially could be an ineffective way. So imagine what can happen for you when you actually start doing things the way that candidates expect them to be done now, or the right way. I mean, there are services, obviously you listen to one of them now from Access Generation, these services will help you to identify the areas that you need to improve and areas of improvement that your business can make to start attracting young people. And then these additional things that you need to include, there is software available, like ourselves, the Vacancy Filler, and the software that we offer is there to not only provide the functionality that's needed to cater for the needs of the young person, but we're actually able to semi and even fully automate some of the things that they have come to expect. Now, the knock-on benefit of this is that you'll also attract more people just in general, not just young people, because it is the majority of people out there that actually want to work for a company that genuinely cares about the employees and the world itself, and not just profits. And your careers page really is a great way to show that. So in my opinion, what you actually have in front of you is a massive, massive opportunity and not a problem. If you just look at these questions here, they're two great questions to ask yourself, and I'd recommend that you ask yourself as an organisation these questions often. As you grow and evolve, these questions will probably have different answers. But as your website is right now, if you ask yourself, are you happy that your careers page and the journey that any visitor that lands on your careers page takes, are you happy that that represents who you are as an organisation? And does it really represent what you offer to an employee as an employer? I mean, maybe you are, I don't know. But I know for us, Vacancy Filler, I know that even though we're fully aware of what needs to be done, and even more so now we've seen and worked with Access Generation, I know that there's still improvements that we can make to our careers page in order to attract young people, and even improvements we can make just to attract people in general. So it is a candidates market now, which does mean that they have more choice for who they work for and where they work. And ultimately, they're going to be weighing you up, both pros and cons. And it's not just your competitors they're going to be weighing you up against. It will just be similar organisations as well, and organisations that are local to them. So the last thing that you want to happen is that you come across a great candidate and you lose out on them just because your company didn't talk about holidays, whereas the person that they were considering talked about 25 days holiday a year, 1 extra day per year of service, up to 30 days. But you thought that was too obvious to include. You thought they would just know that that's what it is. Or maybe you don't want the potential employee to make the decision to work for you based on how many holidays they get. But that ultimately is what they're going to look for, because they might not know that it's obvious. And ultimately, it looks like they offer a better package than you. So you do need to tell candidates exactly what they're going to get. And looking at the second question, you also need to assign ownership of that to someone in your organisation. I mean, we personally have two people, that's someone in marketing and someone in HR, and we share that responsibility so that we can stay on top of it. We know what's good to offer, as an organisation. So what's good for us, but also good for the potential employee. And we're also able to convey that in an effective way that is going to be enticing and appealing for our target audience.
That's brilliant. It'd be quite interesting for those of you that are still listening in, who is accountable for the job section or careers page, or who owns it in your organisation? If you want to use your chat box, it'd be really interesting to find out who owns it in your company. What we found through the research is that that side of the website tends to be quite neglected. I know from my own experience working in a corporate environment in a marketing team, as a marketing person, you are often targeted to generate leads for the business. So if there was a section on About Us or career section for the company, it wasn't necessarily or seen as a responsibility of marketing. But when it came to HR, as many of you will know because you do the role day in, day out, you have numerous tasks and recruitment is just one of them. So it's not always going to be at the top of your priorities or on your mind. So I think that's why through the research we found that those parts of the website are often neglected and not seen as high value compared to the product or service the business might be promoting. I can see on the chat comments that quite a few of you are saying a mixture of marketing and HR, or marketing and HR together, or recruitment teams, employer branding teams. Okay, brilliant. That's interesting. Okay, so now I just want to talk to you a little bit about a strategic solution. So if you're struggling with recruitment, it often means that you've not got the attraction right to make candidates stick and stay. So if you consider what we told you earlier, 80% of these young people are going direct to your company website to find out more about you as a company before they apply. Reed have done some research that suggests that candidates as a whole, 70%, will actually apply by mobile phone. So they're not even using desktop. So is your website fit for purpose for the 21st century in terms of mobile friendly? When you combine attraction, recruitment and retention, you've got a strategic solution. You can't look at one without the other. If you're struggling with recruitment and you continue to throw money at it in terms of hiring more recruitment agencies, then you're almost masking the problem, not solving it. So if you have an issue with recruitment, the suggestion that we're making is to look at it holistically at your attraction, recruitment and retention, because they all go hand in hand. If you think about innovation in your business, today we're talking about youth employment, so creating those entry-level roles for young people. But what we really champion is having a diverse workforce that represents your community. There's proven statistics and research that suggests that if you combine experienced members of staff with inexperienced members of staff, that you get real benefits in terms of innovative ideas that might come out. And I'll use an example that our founder, Chris Tarry, has had in a previous life. He had a group of graduates who he tasked them with developing and mapping out a process using a piece of software. It was a new piece of software in the business. This was early on in the morning at 11 o'clock. By 2 p.m, the graduates had been on YouTube, trained themselves on the piece of software and mapped out the processes. And he felt that if he did try to do something similar with existing members of staff, that might have been on somebody's performance chart. They might have had to be sent on training days, so it might have been a much longer process. So thinking about ways you can be innovative with a diverse workforce is really important. If you've got a retention problem, that means you've got a problem with your engagement, and you need the engagement with your staff, with your employees, to be able to evidence the things that will attract your candidates. So making sure you're on top of your employee engagement is really key. For progression, obviously I mentioned earlier that progression is one of the top criteria that young people look for when they're searching for employers to work for. But if you can retain people for longer by carving up jobs, a lot of companies have a flat structure, but you could create entry-level roles and upskill existing staff to create an entry point and an entryway in for those inexperienced people. I just want to finish with some top tips on how to become an employer of choice. You need to think local. So whether you're a multinational or national organisation, you need to think local. Excuse me. And I'll just give you some examples. When we did our research with young people looking at those job section on company websites, we found organisations that were in one industry but part of a larger group structure, and they would end up on the group's main website, which is a totally different brand, totally different industry, and that's a really confusing journey for a candidate. We even had some instances where we ended up on a French website, which was totally not what you want if you don't speak French. Second, you need to treat your candidates as a customer. Are there any unnecessary barriers in the way? So we talked earlier about the fact that 2 out of 3 businesses had no entry points for inexperienced young people. We found examples of entry-level roles that were made overly complicated by the request for industry-specific experience. So you might want to go into the automotive industry at an entry-level role, but if you don't have the automotive experience, then you can't get in. So think about any unnecessary barriers that you might be able to take away and teach someone in the role rather than expecting them to have previous experience. Third, promote your purpose. What do you do for society? We've recently spoken to some cleaning companies and they were struggling to work out what their purpose was. And there's a good way of digging deep into your purpose. You might think that a cleaning company just cleans. Well, when you look at a particular cleaning company, if they cleaned hospitals, well, they're cleaning hospitals to make the place safer, more environmentally friendly and healthy so patients can get better quickly. So really think about what you do for society and what your purpose is, because this is something that young people will be looking out for. And before we move on, I'm just going to go check the comments and see if there's any other comments. So recruitment team work with the policy and reward team to keep up to date, and we are currently doing a large project to redo as it has a lot of information currently and repeats the same info on lots of tabs. Yes, that's definitely something to look into, because we found that a lot of companies, they have the right information, but it's not necessarily always easy to find. So good luck with your challenge there. So as you've made it to the end, we have a free giveaway for you. So through the Youth Employment Accessibility Research, we have an assessment tool that young people use. So we're giving away the first 10 companies a free report. This assessment will give you a peer comparison against the expectations of young people. It will give you a chance to find out what your organisation has right in terms of the candidate journey, the supportive content and employer branding to attract the next generation, plus any areas that you might need to improve on. So if you want to drop me an email, these slides will be sent out afterwards if you want to reply on the back of those as well. This is just a quick overview today. So if any of you would be interested in any further conversations, we have a free training workshop that's been sponsored by Vacancy Filler on the 12th of September. That takes place in Leicester on the 12th of September. And then we've got a paid for employer branding workshop on the 26th of September as well. All the event details, there's more on there as well. I've just highlighted the next 2 that are in our diaries. So do have a look at the website. And we've got our contact details on here. At this point, is there any questions? Interesting. Gemma Longfellow, what do you think are the big don't do points and what do they find patronising? So one thing we've already covered, Gemma, is the need to evidence policies and statements. So if we're talking about equality and diversity, this is one of the big things that young people are looking for. They want to work for an employer that's inclusive. And if you just had a statement saying, you know, you have E&D in your business, or maybe you have a policy document, that's not enough. So you need to think about ways that you might evidence that. So don't just have generic statements without detail. What do they find patronising? I think it's worth pointing out that when we talk about supportive content, sometimes we've had businesses suggest that supportive content would dumb down their job section. In fact, that does support opening up your business to being a more supportive business. So I think just don't necessarily over egg the role, but don't undermine it either.
And just on that point, almost one thing that we found young people, but people in general, again, find attractive about an organisation is obviously work with charities, so their corporate social responsibility. But what we really found is that it's not just about giving money to the charity, it's about giving time, actually showing that you care, because we do see a lot of people stating that they've raised money or donated money to a certain charity, but with no evidence really of how it was done or any team photographs of the company physically getting involved in that charity work to help a cause. So it's not about paying a charity, it's about doing things with and for a charity to really align that cause with your organisation.
Alicia, we have challenges finding young people. As the job titles are posting, young people are not aware of the roles on offer in head office. Any suggestions around this? Yes, Alicia, one of the big things that we would recommend is that, I'm not sure what area you're based in, but certainly locally in the Leicestershire area, there are tons of initiatives that have pools of young people that are trying to get back into work. But also get in touch with your local schools and colleges. All educational establishments have employer targets. They have to have employer engagement targets. So they're trying to find employers to work with to match them up with the right young people. So try and find out who your local contacts are. Have a look at any initiatives. If you've got a Prince's Trust, maybe a 2020, which is a charity that works with unemployed young people. There's bound to be a lot of initiatives around your local area. Also think about where you might be posting. One of the things we found from the research is that, and this is graduate levels as well as people out of college, only 20% had heard of or even used LinkedIn. And that was a massive surprise to me. As somebody from the millennial generation, LinkedIn and Twitter are my world. But for somebody from the Gen Z and coming through, they haven't even heard of LinkedIn. So if you're posting anything like graduate positions on LinkedIn, then yes, it might be appropriate to target mums and dads. But if you're trying to target the young people, they're not there. It might be worth also noting, for those of you still online at the moment, the same amount of people hadn't heard of Glassdoor either. So they look for social proof. So they're looking at your social accounts when they're looking to assess your employer branding. So they're not necessarily aware of websites like Glassdoor. Any other comments at all? Okay, so we've come to a close. If you've got any questions, do send Jason or I an email and we'll get back to you. We'll send the slides and the recordings around. And if you have any other questions, do get in touch. Thanks all.